just on Friday, as we were recording, we saw Tua Tagovailoa get his new contract extension with the Miami Dolphins, and not long after, we saw Jordan Love sign his deal with the Green Bay Packers. 4 years, $220 million. So that's where we will be starting today, as Love is a very interesting situation here. Drafted in the first round of 2021 and spent the first 2 years of his career on the bench. And I do think that it's important to at least note that he has been in the Packers organization for already a few years. And while last season was the first year he actually got on-field game experience with the Packers, they have been evaluating him from the moment that he stepped foot in the building in 2020 when he was selected in that draft. So it's not like this is... there is still an argument to be made that this could be a flash in the pan, but what we have seen as viewers is significantly less than what's been going on behind the scenes in Green Bay for the past few years. So ultimately, when you look at the situation that's been taking place here, Jordan Love, we understood both parties, the Packers organization especially, was very optimistic that they were going to be able to work out some sort of contract extension. Love signed one last offseason where it was a very team-friendly deal, meaning that this time around he knew that he was deserving of getting his, and that's exactly what ends up happening, where he is set to make $55 million a year with this new deal, making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. A year shorter, but it is on par with the contract that Trevor Lawrence just signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. That one with that extra year on top, making it a total of $275 million. But still the same in terms of average annual value. It's now on par with that Joe Burrow contract that was signed as well last offseason. So Jordan Love very fairly compensated for his patience with the organization, and now it feels like the Packers are going to be kind of off and running in this new era with Jordan Love, where last year he put up some very impressive statistics: 4,159 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and ultimately was able to lead a very young Packers team to a surprise playoff appearance and a playoff win over the Dallas Cowboys as the 7th seed. And what impressed me most about Jordan Love, and I have been praising him for, is the fact that it's not by any means that the Packers don't have talent at the receiver position. They have spent a number of draft picks over these past couple years, kind of ironically, since moving on from Aaron Rodgers, considering the fact that all he ever wanted from them, or at least publicly what he was saying, is he just wanted some stability in terms of surrounding him with other talent and from a receiver standpoint, and then they go and they take his replacement instead, specifically looking back to that 2020 draft. But since then, the Packers have been very proactive in trying to surround Love with a number of good options, where Jaden Reed was a day 2 pick within the past couple of years. Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks ended up being a nice surprise for them. Drafted multiple tight ends in 2023 in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. So a number of different options around Love, and he distributed the ball around very well. I just mentioned he threw for over 4,100 passing yards last season, and there wasn't a single player on his team that got 100 targets or more. The most targeted wide receiver was Romeo Doubs with 96, but it goes to show that that Love has already shown a level of maturity that has been very impactful, and I feel like has to have Packers fans very optimistic about the future. And again, in terms of the on-the-field production, this is a very big swing for the Packers, giving $55 million per year to a player that's only given you 1 season's worth of starting football. And on top of that, a $75 million signing bonus, which I believe is the highest in NFL history, that there are absolutely risks that could come with this deal. Because as much as I made the argument that the Packers have had all of this internal scouting of Jordan Love and that they have been able to assess him by themselves without necessarily any of us viewers being able to watch him as well, the same can be said to some degree that these other NFL teams that are specifically the ones that are game planning against Jordan Love, now they have a full year of films worth on him and they can start to more accurately game plan against Love. And I think that that's obviously something that any young quarterback goes through. We talk about the sophomore slump and how, in large part, that can become an actual thing because of the fact that other teams have a better idea of what your strengths and, more importantly, what your weaknesses are. So I'm sure that it's not going to be, all flowery from here and that Jordan Love is just going to ascend into a guaranteed all-world talent. That is definitely still a possibility, and I have a lot of confidence in Jordan Love moving forward here. But of course, there is a significant amount of risk that it comes into play here, but I feel like ultimately this was the right decision for them. Yes, Jordan Love only has 1 year starting, but he is still just 25 years old. He's got a lot of time to continue to grow as a quarterback as well. We saw the first half of the season was not anywhere near as smooth as the second half of the season was. He continued to improve with playing time, so you would hope that it does happen to be the case. And ultimately, I think that with the Packers, they don't really have all too many veteran players on their payroll that are taking up this money anyways. Now is sort of the time where they can take this type of a gamble for Jordan Love. It's not like they still have a Devontae Adams or any other major offensive playmaker that's on the books that now in turn they're going to have to part ways with. You look at the 49ers with Brock Purdy, who has been playing very good caliber quarterback play for the past couple seasons and has been making under $1 million per year annually from his contract, and he's been able to be surrounded with some elite options in Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. Once Purdy goes on to make his money, they're going to have to cut costs somewhere. We've heard extensively about the ongoing contract negotiation process between the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk, and obviously the changes are going to need to be made as the years go on here with Brock Purdy and once he gets his money. So that's not really the case here in Green Bay, where all of these weapons that he's been working with, specifically this past season, they are all on rookie contracts. So it's not like it is him getting this type of money is going to directly impact the level of skill that's around him because it is such a young team. So I stand by this deal. I do think it's also interesting to see how this plays out to some degree, considering during the 2024 NFL Draft, one of the biggest conversations was surrounding the Atlanta Falcons, who went out and paid Kirk Cousins this past offseason, giving him a new contract, and now very shortly after, just a month or so after, drafting Michael Penix Jr. in the first round with the 8th overall pick. And they were very upfront in saying that the plan is that Penix is going to eventually be the successor of Kirk Cousins, that it's going to be at least 2 or 3 years, ideally, that Kirk Cousins is their starter and that Penix can learn under him and eventually take over. Now, part of the biggest difference, I would say, in that conversation is the fact that Michael Penix is already 24 years old in comparison to Jordan Love, where when he came into the league, he was something like 23, maybe 22 years old. So Penix, if you give him this same sort of runway in terms of years from now, finally getting his start, he will be in his late 20s. So it is definitely more concerning there, but it is going to be interesting to see, to some degree at least, sort of how this plays out for Green Bay, because I feel like it could at least somewhat give us some type of answers as for what that contract negotiation process and how all of this works out in Atlanta when they are, again, ideally in their books, going to have Kirk Cousins play these next couple years and then have Michael Penix take over and be the franchise quarterback. So not perfectly, equivalent situations, but it is still something that at least crossed my mind throughout this Jordan Love situation, considering that he was also a first-round pick with a direct plan to eventually be the successor at the starting quarterback position. So, pretty fascinating. Again, final thoughts here. I do think that this is the right move for the Packers, that Jordan Love is likely only going to be getting more expensive the longer you sort of push off these contract negotiations. Now, I'm not saying that you should feel maybe great with paying him this type of money, but I think at the end of the day, it's the right decision. I trust Jordan Love to eventually be able to take over here and emerge as one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. I feel like we're maybe a little bit premature in some of the conversations we've been having this offseason in terms of who would you pick first to build your franchise around, but Jordan Love can absolutely insert himself into the conversation definitively, I would say, this upcoming season, as this is just going to be another year where, again, you're running back a lot of that same offense. You get a change in the running back room, going from Aaron Jones to Josh Jacobs, which in my eyes is probably a slight upgrade, even though I am a very big fan of Aaron Jones, and seemed a little bit dirty to some degree the way the Packers went about that. Josh Jacobs is a better receiving threat in my eyes from the running back position, and that he's going to work out very well in Green Bay. So I think there's a lot of optimism to be had moving forward here, but let me know how you feel in the comment section, because ultimately there's still just so much unknown in all of this because of the fact that the body of the work in terms of what has been public access, in-game NFL action, it's just so much smaller and almost unprecedentedly lower considering how much money he just got in this new $220 million deal. But again, let us know your thoughts in the comments section. We are going to be taking our first break of the show, though, to discuss the Team USA basketball win over Team Serbia over the weekend. This was the first official game of the Olympics coming out of the exhibition games that they played. Started off in group play, and ultimately we saw Kevin Durant become the full version of what we have seen Kevin Durant be, and some controversy surrounding Steve Kerr's rotations yet again, as Jason Tatum played 0 minutes in this game against Serbia. So we will be diving into all of that, but first a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.